Okay, can everybody hear okay? Good. Okay, so we're about to have 3 days with Shantideva. Shantideva is the author of our text, A Guide to a Bodhisattva's Way of Life. And this is one of my favorite texts. I've heard teachings on it from His Holiness the Dalai Lama, from Geshe Zopa, from a number of my other teachers. And it's really one of my all-time favorites because it's very applicable to our lives. But before we start on that, I just want to say that it's so nice to be back in Singapore again. When I was walking up here, it felt like, it wasn't very long ago, even though it was a whole year ago, when I was coming to do the same thing, because we've been going through this text for a while. So it's just very nice to be back here with all of you. And before we start, I wanted to thank very much Pureland Marketing and Friends of Shravasti Abbey, or FOSA, for organizing the teachings. And because they've all been working very hard to make it possible so that all of us can be here together and share the Dharma. And I also want to thank the people who created the Taipei Buddhist Center, because it's quite a remarkable place. When I first came to Singapore in 1987, Taipei Buddhist Center wasn't here. It was just a piece of ground. But I stayed at the temple, the Taipei Temple that's up on Balestier Road, off of Balestier Road, when I first came. And Venerable Fat Kwan, who's the nun who built this temple, she was the abbess there. So she was one of the first people I met when I came to Singapore, because I didn't really know anybody when I first came here. And she was very kind to me, and she's always been kind of a model for me of how to have a happy mind with whatever you're doing. Because she worked very, very hard at the temple, at the old age home, and then to gather all the funds and do all the planning and work with the architects and so on and so forth to build this place. And she was always very supportive of the Buddhist societies at the Polis and the universities. So she worked very hard. And normally most of us, when we work very hard, we're kind of exhausted. And sometimes we get in a bad mood. But I never saw her like that. She was just somebody who had a lot of happiness in her life, no matter how hard she worked. And I think it was because she was working and doing things that benefited others. But I'm very, very grateful to Venerable Fat Kwan for all that she taught me. And, I remember very clearly, you're hearing my old reminiscing stories here, but the little room outside there, after this place was built, I met her one day there, and I told her how I wanted to start a monastery in the US, and it was difficult and all these kinds of things. And she was so encouraging. She was very sympathetic with all the problems that you go through starting something, but also very encouraging. So I always remember her, and I'm grateful to her when I come here. And I'm very glad to see how Taipei Buddhist Center is really being of so much benefit to the Buddhist community and to everybody here in Singapore. Okay, so before we start on the text here, and on talking about anger, let's spend a few minutes calming our minds. I always like to do this. So we're going to get into Shantideva's text. So just a little history about this text. Shantideva lived in the 8th century, in India, and he was at a monastery, and outwardly he seemed to do only 3 things. And so, he wasn't one of these monks who was always bowing and reading and, praying and doing things. And so the other monks didn't have much respect for him because he only did 3 things: eat, sleep, and go to the bathroom. So that's what they called him. That was his nickname, the monk who did 3 things. Okay. And so they wanted to humiliate him so that they could then kick him out of the monastery, because they said he's just this lazy, good-for-nothing monk. So they asked him to give some teachings. And then they built a very, very high throne for him to sit on when he was giving the teachings. And they thought, oh, he'll come up to that. And they didn't put any stairs, that, he'll come up and he won't be able to get on the seat and everybody will laugh, and then that'll be the end of it. But actually, he walked up to the throne and he put his hand on it, and he lowered the throne through his psychic abilities, sat on the throne, and then the throne went back up. So that surprised the monks in the monastery. And then he proceeded to give this Dharma talk, which they thought was just going to be nonsense. But actually, the Dharma talk he gave was this text. Yeah, Bodhicharya Avatara, the guide to a Bodhisattva's way of life. And this book is just amazing how it covers the whole path to enlightenment. And he taught the first 8 chapters, and then the 9th chapter of the book is about emptiness, the wisdom chapter. And so while he was teaching that chapter, he just elevated in space and disappeared until all they could hear was his voice, but they couldn't see him any longer. So then they realized that this lazy, good-for-nothing monk actually knew something very important. And it's a good teaching for us not to be judgmental of anybody, because we really know who's who, do we? Okay. So he taught this book, and a number of years ago, I started teaching it here in Singapore. And, every year giving 3 or 4 talks on it. And so last year we finished chapter 5. This year we're starting chapter 6. If you miss the first years, don't worry, because there's enough in this text that you'll be able to follow along right from the beginning today, because we're talking about anger. And unless you're really ignorant about anger, I think you know something about the topic. Yeah. So, and then also Pureland Marketing, I believe, has the videos of the talks from the previous years, so you can get them and watch them if you like. Okay, but this year we're going to start with chapter 6, which is on the way that it's translated here. The Sanskrit word is kshanti, and it's translated as patience here. But actually, I think fortitude is a better translation. For me, the word patience sometimes indicates that you're waiting for somebody. Just be patient, they'll arrive, So patience is what you do while you're waiting. But that's not the meaning of kshanti. Kshanti, it means having a strong mind that can bear difficulty, a strong mind that can keep going even when there's problems or suffering or fear or something else. So it's really about developing a strong mind, which I think is really important for all of us. Yeah, I don't know about you, but the more I practice, it's just, okay, I need to have a really firm, strong mind here. And what's beautiful about this chapter is he teaches us how to cultivate it. So there's 3 situations in general where we need to have fortitude, this firm and strong mind. So one is when we have just general physical suffering or pain or illness, something like that. A second situation is when we're studying the Dharma, and particularly when we're studying the topic of the nature of reality, because that can really jolt our old conceptions. And then the third place where we need a strong mind is when we're criticized and put down. Okay, so how to deal with criticism, suffering, and then also fear. Okay, how to develop fortitude, inner strength in the confront of these situations. The opposite, what if we don't have fortitude, the usual way we react in these 3 situations is we get overcome by fear or by anger. Like when we're sick or when we have pain, we just get angry at the situation. I have a stomach ache, but I find somebody else to blame it on, or I'm just angry in general. Okay? And especially when we're criticized, oh boy, we get really angry then, don't we? Do you get angry when you're criticized? Out there, hey? Yeah? You get angry? Yes? Yeah. Do you have hurt feelings? Yeah. What do you do when you get angry? How many of you get really angry and explode at other people? How many explode? Okay. Not too many exploders. How many of you implode? In other words, when you get angry, you just stay and get stuck and don't speak to anybody. How many of you are like that? Oh, a few more. How many of you do both things, depending on the situation? Okay. Yeah. But sometimes, I didn't think I had a bad problem with anger. Before I met Buddhism, I knew I got angry a little bit, but, my anger was okay because my anger was always justified. Yeah? I mean, people really were so stupid, so of course I had to get angry at them. It was completely justified. But other people's anger, especially when they got angry at me, that was totally unjustified. Nothing in it. I don't know. Their anger is really terrible. Okay. But my anger was kind of smart. So I thought, okay. So I didn't really think I had much of a problem with anger because I didn't yell and scream. I came from a family where one part of my family yells and screams and the other part doesn't. They kind of withdraw. Yeah. So I wasn't like the part of my family that yells and screams, so I thought, oh, I don't have much of a problem. And then my teacher sent me to work in an Italian Dharma center. I had only been a nun for a couple of years, and then I got shipped out to Italy. I didn't know Italian language or Italian culture or anything. And I was sent to be the spiritual director of the Dharma center and also to be the disciplinarian of the monks. Okay. So any of you who know about Italy, the men in Italy are really macho. Yeah, really. The kind of, we're men, this kind of chest-beating stuff. And so there was no way they wanted a woman who was their disciplinarian. So we had some interesting encounters together. And it was in Italy, due to the kindness of these monks, that I began to learn that I had a problem with anger. Not just the monks, the rest of the men too. Because of the culture, because I grew up in the States, and I was a very independent thinking woman, you know, and I believe in gender equality, and there I was with these macho Italian men. And we didn't get along very well at all, at all. In fact, it was kind of like Los Alamos sometimes, you know, where they did the nuclear testing. So I discovered there that I had a problem with anger. And at one time, I was so miserable, I was so unhappy, because they criticized me, they made fun of me, they ridiculed me, they teased me. And I was just sweet, innocent, benevolent me. You know, I didn't do anything wrong. And these guys are just picking on me totally unnecessarily. Can you imagine? Is that how you feel when people criticize you? I'm just sweet, innocent me. There's nothing wrong with me. Yeah. So what are you getting bent out of shape at, getting mad at me for? So that's what I felt like. But I had heard enough, and so I was getting angry because they were doing these things. And my feelings, of course, were really hurt. And I wanted to leave. I just wanted to get out of there. But I couldn't leave without my teacher's permission. So I wrote a letter to my teacher, and I said, please, you know, I'm getting so angry here. I'm creating so much negative karma. It's going to send me to the lower realms, and it's all their fault. Because they don't appreciate me, they're picking on me, they're uncooperative. Please, can I leave? And so my teacher writes me and says, oh, we'll talk about it when I'm there, dear. I'm coming in 6 months. 6 months? You gotta be kidding. You know, I'm not going to make it for 6 months. Well, I made it, you know. And the only way I made it those 6 months was every day I would get angry, and every night I would go to my room, and I would open to chapter 6, and I would read this book. And that's the way I made it through those 6 months. And so my book, Working with Anger, is from this book, you know, Shantideva's chapter on patience, because that was the way I discovered that I had a problem with anger, and that was what the situation that forced me into trying to do something with my anger. And I was so angry, I cannot tell you. After my teacher came, you know, he gave me permission to leave. And so I went back to Nepal, and I saw Zopa Rinpoche there, and he invited me for tea. And so we were having tea on the roof of the old Kopan Gompa. This was like back in, what year was this? My goodness. Maybe 1980 or 81. It was a long time ago. So we're sitting there, and it's so peaceful. And so Rinpoche looks at me and he says, you know, who's kinder to you? We'll call this one of the people, the guys in particular there, they all drove me crazy, but one of them was really too much. And so we'll call him Sam. That's not his name, but we'll call him Sam. So Rinpoche says to me, well, who's kinder to you, the Buddha or Sam? And I thought, what kind of question is that? You know, the Buddha is so kind. The Buddha teaches me, and the Buddha inspires me, and the Buddha's my role model, and the Buddha's sitting there so calm and peaceful. He doesn't criticize me or anything. And Sam is the exact opposite. Yeah. So I said to Rinpoche, well, of course the Buddha's kinder to me than Sam. And Rinpoche looked at me like, you still haven't got it yet, kiddo, have you? You know? And then he proceeded to explain to me how Sam was kinder than all the Buddhas. Yeah. And I'm like, what? Sam is kinder than all the Buddhas? And Rinpoche explained that in order to become a Buddha, you need to practice fortitude. Okay? It's one of the 6 far-reaching attitudes, one of the 6 paramitas or perfections. So we need to practice that. But we can't practice that with the Buddha, because the Buddha doesn't drive us crazy. And we can't practice fortitude with our friends, because they're usually nice to us. So it's only the people who criticize us, who get in our way, who make us miserable. Those are the only people we have to practice fortitude with. And the practice of fortitude is essential for becoming a Buddha. So if we want to become a fully awakened one, we need enemies to practice fortitude with. Okay, so that's what Rinpoche said to me. Of course, that was not what I wanted to hear. What I wanted Rinpoche to say was, oh, poor dear, I know you worked in Italy with those very disagreeable monks, and it was so hard for you. But you're a very good practitioner, and you did your best in adversity, and I'm really sorry you had so much suffering. That's what I wanted to hear. That's not what my teacher told me. He told me Sam, this complete jerk, was kinder to me than all the Buddhas. You know. But you start to listen to your teacher, you know? I mean, lots of times your teacher says things you don't understand, but you chose them as a teacher because you respect them and you know they know more than you do. So you don't just throw it out at the beginning. So I took that home with me and I began to think about it, you know, is Sam kinder to me than all the Buddhas? And I began to see that yes, in a way, he really was. Yeah. Because it was only through Sam's kindness that I discovered I had a problem with anger. Otherwise, I was completely oblivious. And like I said, I thought, you know, my anger's justified because I was always right. Yeah. So Sam was the one who told me, well, maybe you're not always right. And maybe your anger's making you miserable, and maybe you should consider doing something about it. So I have to thank Sam. Now, in my life, actually, I've had many incarnations of Sam. I left Italy, but I kept meeting other incarnations of Sam throughout my life. Yeah. Do you have a Sam in your life who has many incarnations so that you may go different places and be with different people, but similar kinds of things keep happening that drive you absolutely crazy, and it's always their fault? Yeah, have you noticed that? It's always somebody else's fault. Because remember, we are sweet and innocent. We are benevolent and kind-hearted. It's them. Okay. So we all have, some Sam in our life who keeps appearing again and again and again. Okay? And unfortunately, Sam doesn't schedule his appearances. It would be so nice, don't you think, it would be so nice if all the Sams in your life said, okay, today at 3 o'clock, I'm going to criticize you, so please just be prepared and know it's coming. Wouldn't that be nice? Or if somebody said, tomorrow I'm going to tell you that I haven't done any of the work you asked me to do, and you're going to feel completely let down. But I'm just giving you a warning to be prepared. I mean, it would be nice, wouldn't it, if people scheduled their crises? Yeah, I really wish that, give me some time, some advance notice that you're going to be in a bad mood, that you're going to yell and scream, that you're going to have a crisis. But you know what? That's one of Sam's things. He just doesn't give us any notice. Yeah. And out of the blue, we get criticized. And we have all these unfair things happen to us. Right? Sweet, innocent, benevolent, kind-hearted us who never does anything wrong, do we? We never deserve the criticism. So we think. Okay, so this chapter, we're going to start out talking a little bit about developing fortitude in the face of suffering, and then we'll move into fortitude when studying the Dharma, and then we'll get to the fortitude of enduring criticism and things like that. So it's going to be a very juicy chapter. Okay, so let's start. By the way, there's different translations of this book. This one, I'm using the one by Stephen Batchelor. Some of you may have Alan Wallace's translation, and there's one by Padmakara, and there's a few other ones there. So if what I read doesn't correspond exactly to what you're reading, it's because of that. Okay? So verse 1. Whatever wholesome deeds, such as venerating the Buddhas and generosity, that have been amassed over 1,000 eons, will all be destroyed in one moment of anger. What do you think about that? Yikes. Okay. So what Shantideva is saying here is that we create merit with a lot of effort, and we put time and energy into creating merit. We're generous, we offer service at the temple, we do charity projects for society, we help sponsor books for free distribution. We do all sorts of meritorious deeds. Yeah. And we rejoice in the merit, but when we get angry, our anger destroys that merit. Okay. And especially if we get angry at a bodhisattva, we really destroy a lot of merit, because the bodhisattvas are the ones who are working for the benefit of all sentient beings. So if we get angry with them, if you get angry at somebody who's working for the benefit of all sentient beings, then we're, impinging on the welfare of all sentient beings. So that's what Shantideva's getting at here, that we create merit with a lot of energy and a lot of work, but then we turn around and destroy it by getting angry or by having wrong views. So it's kind of like having a little puppy, you know? I know Singaporeans don't like pets very much, but just bear with me. It's a good analogy. Do some of you like little puppies? They're cute, aren't they? You know, they're kind of fuzzy and cute. So you give your puppy a bath, and what's the first thing your puppy does after it takes a bath? Yeah, he shakes himself off, and then he rolls in the dirt. Okay? So just after you clean him, he goes and rolls in the dirt. Yeah? So we're kind of the same way. We put energy into creating virtue, and as soon as we do that, then we go and get angry. So we're kind of like undoing, you know, the effort that we put forth. So this is a big disadvantage of anger, isn't it? Because we know how important merit is. You know, merit is what enables us to have a happy life this life. It enables us to be able to die peacefully and have a good rebirth. Merit is what supports our mind and enables us to attain liberation. And especially the collection of merit is really important on the Bodhisattva path when we want to become fully enlightened Buddhas. Okay? And so we're working at complete counter purposes to what we ourselves want when we get angry. So that's a big disadvantage, wouldn't you say? Yeah, destroying our merit. So this is one reason why we should avoid getting angry, and another reason why it's important to dedicate our merit, because that helps impede it getting destroyed. So that's verse 1. Verse 2. There is no transgression like hatred, and no fortitude or no practice like fortitude. Thus I should strive in various ways to meditate on fortitude. Okay? So there's no transgression like hatred, meaning that hatred, anger, rage, that these things make us transgress not only our precepts, but they make us go against what we really deeply value in our life. Because I think we all want to become better people, and anger is what really creates a big hindrance to becoming a better person. And anger also makes us extremely unhappy, okay? So hatred is a transgression in that way. And so, therefore, there's no virtue that can even compare with fortitude, because fortitude enables us to really abandon the anger and the hatred. And when I talk about applying fortitude and abandoning anger and hatred, I'm not talking about suppressing it, okay? Yeah, suppressing our anger or repressing it is very different than developing fortitude. Because when we repress our anger, it's still there, okay? And lots of us repress our anger. You know, we stuff it in our heart, and we say, oh, I'm okay. You know, I'm a good Buddhist. I don't get angry. You know, and we put on this big display. Oh, I'm so patient. It didn't bother me. I feel so sorry for them. You know, this kind of condescending patience, in quotes, that we have. But actually, the anger's still in our hearts, and it's just going to come out some other way. Yeah? So repressing the anger doesn't work, and that's not what we're talking about. What Shantideva is going to teach us here is how to work with our anger so that we can release it completely, so that there's nothing to repress. Okay, so this is very important. Okay, so thus I should strive in various ways to meditate on fortitude, because fortitude is going to be what helps us. And verse 3, my mind will not experience peace if it fosters painful thoughts of hatred. I shall find no joy or happiness. Unable to sleep, I shall feel unsettled. So here he's talking about the disadvantages of having hatred or anger. Okay, so let's talk a little bit first about our definition of hatred or anger. Yeah, and I'm using, I may use the word anger, but I'm using it to cover a whole variety of emotions that all have the same quality, okay? And that quality is that they exaggerate the negative qualities of someone or something, and then make us want to either strike at whatever caused us the harm, or run away from it. So the flight or fight response. But it's all based on exaggerating the harm. Okay. Now, when we're angry or when we hate somebody, we don't feel like we're exaggerating, do we? We feel like we're perceiving the situation exactly as it is. Don't you think? Yeah, when you're really angry at somebody, when some family member did something again that you can't stand, yeah, we feel like, I am not exaggerating. What this person's doing is totally unacceptable. Yeah, I have every right to be angry, and my anger's good, and there's nothing exaggerated about it. The situation is very simple. I'm right, you're wrong, and you need to change. Isn't it? Isn't that the way we look at it? Yeah. I'm not exaggerating. It's very clear. I'm right, and you're wrong. No need to discuss. Yeah. No discussion necessary. You just need to see that it's all your fault. Because my anger is not exaggerated in any way. I am seeing reality completely. Yeah. And then the other person says, well, wait a minute, I don't see reality that way. I have another viewpoint. And we say, well, you're wrong. Because anybody who disagrees with our opinions undoubtedly is wrong, right? Because we only think right thoughts. Everybody else thinks foolish things. Right? Okay. So when we're angry, we don't think I'm exaggerating the harms. We don't think that our mind is under the control of some affliction. We're just so enveloped in the situation and enveloped in the belief that I'm right and the other person's an idiot, that we can't hear anything. Yeah? So this kind of attitude creates some problems in our life. Don't you think? Sure does, doesn't it? Yeah. Because here we are. I'm right, you're wrong. Yeah. And then how does everybody else feel? Are we approachable? Can they express their feelings? Can they say anything? No. We're completely like a concrete wall. Yeah, we can't hear anybody else. In fact, we don't even want to hear them. All we want is that they should change their mind and agree with us. Completely unreasonable the way we act when we're angry. Yeah, so it's very much based on exaggeration. Yeah, so that's one thing to learn, is when you see yourself getting angry, to stop and think, maybe I'm exaggerating. Okay. Now, you're going to go, but I'm not exaggerating. I'm really not. Here's this person who criticized me. I am not exaggerating. Yeah, I didn't do that. Or if I did, it was just a little bit. And they should forgive me. They are the ones who should be patient. Okay. So we become very difficult to talk to. What happens in your relationships when other people feel like they can't talk to you? What happens? Do you have warm and friendly relationships with those people? Hardly. Let's reverse it. How do you feel when you're with somebody that you can't talk to because they're always right and they always have to win the argument? How do you feel? It's not a very pleasant situation. Well, that's exactly how others feel when we're the one who has to win and who's always right and who nobody can talk to. Okay. When we get that way, when we get really entrenched in our views, and especially when it's towards somebody that we really care about, we are actually working in counter purposes to what we really want. Okay? Because sometimes the people we get the angriest at are the people we love the most. Wouldn't you say? Yeah. It's the people we care about the most that we get the angriest at. And yet it really becomes very difficult because we destroy the trust and we create a lot of unhappiness. But I think when we're angry at those people, what we're really trying to say is, I want connection with you. And right now I don't feel connected. But I really care about you, and what I want is connection. I don't feel connected, and I don't know how to create a connection with you at this moment. I think that's what we're really trying to say behind the anger. Yeah, just think about it for a minute. When you're the people that you get the angriest at, when you're really angry at them, isn't what you really want to be connected? Yeah. And yet our anger is creating the exact opposite of what we want. Because when we're angry, other people are not going to feel connected to us. What we want at that time is connection. But we become so obstinate, so difficult to be with, that they can't connect with us. And they usually just want to get away from us. Okay? So when we look at it this way, we see that we're the ones who suffer the most from our own anger. That yes, our anger harms other people, but we're the one who our anger harms the most. Yeah. Because we really want to be close to other people, and we want to have friends, and we want to get along with other people. This is natural human instinct to want these things. And yet our anger is making it difficult for us to have that connection and affection and feeling of belonging that we so much want. So when we think about it and we see that our anger harms us, then instead of believing in our anger and thinking our anger is our friend, we'll start to look at our anger as something undesirable and even see our anger as our enemy. Okay? And here it's very important to understand that we are not our anger. When I say see our anger as our enemy, I'm not talking about hating ourselves for being angry. Hating ourselves is completely useless. Yeah, don't get involved in hating yourself or feeling guilty. Okay, because we are not our anger. We don't have to hate ourselves for being angry. Our anger is an affliction. It's something that's laid on top of the pure nature of our mind. So the nature of our mind is pure. Okay, it by nature is untainted. The anger is something extra put on top of it. It's like you might have a very clean cloth, and anger is the dirt that's put on top of the cloth. So we can get rid of our anger, we can do something about it. Yeah. So don't get angry at yourself for being angry. And don't hate yourself for being angry. But instead, we want to see anger impedes with me fulfilling the things that I really want. I want to live a good life. I want to be a kind person. I want to have friends and good relationships. And my anger is making it difficult for me. So that's what I mean by seeing our anger as our enemy. And then when we get angry, we don't trust our anger so much. Anger starts to come, and we kind of step and look at our anger and go, you're going to make me really miserable if I let you. Okay? And then that gives us the energy to apply the antidotes to our anger. So it's very important for us at the beginning to really be clear about the disadvantages of anger. Okay? And I say this because sometimes people don't feel that there's anything wrong with being angry. Like I told you, before I met the Dharma, I thought my anger was fine. Okay? I didn't see any disadvantage. And until we see the disadvantage, we're not going to change. Okay. So to give you an example, when I said that sometimes when we get angry, what we really want is to be connected to the person we're angry with. I remember a time when I had a friend who was driving an old car. In the States, it's not like Singapore where they make you, trade your cars in when they get old. So he was driving an old car. And one problem with this car is that sometimes the hood would fly up. This was just a little bit dangerous. So one time, my friend was supposed to come, and I was waiting, and he didn't come, And time went by, and he still didn't come, and he still didn't come. And I was really concerned. I was really worried because we had agreed to meet at 5 o'clock, and, by, I don't know what time it was, 6:30 or 7, he still wasn't there. So I was really concerned. So when he finally got there, and I said, "What happened?" And he said, the hood of my car flew up when I was on the highway. And, and one part of me felt so relieved that he was still safe. But another part of me got so angry because I had been telling him for a long time to have the hood of his car fixed, and he hadn't done it. So, although I was very relieved that he was safe, I got so mad at him. And I said, the hood flew up on the highway. Why, of course, it was going to do that. I'd been telling you to get the hood fixed. Why didn't you do it? You could have killed yourself. You could have killed other people. What a stupid thing you did. I got really mad. Okay? And afterwards, of course, when you study about anger for a while, after a while that, you need to think about it when you blew it. So when I meditated that night, I went, oh, you know, what was I really trying to say in all my anger to him? What I was really trying to say was, I care about you, and I was really worried that something had happened to you, and I'm actually so glad you're safe. That's what I was trying to say, because that's what was really in my heart. But instead of saying that, I said, you idiot, I told you, blah, 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 you should have had it fixed. Okay? So that's a really good example, isn't it, of how my anger was, you know, creating the situation, which was the exact opposite of what I wanted. Because, of course, after I got mad at him, he didn't want to talk to me. No wonder. Okay? So this kind of disadvantage we see from anger. Okay, there's some other ones Shantideva talks about. Okay? My mind will not experience peace. Yeah? When we're angry, there's no peace in our mind. I remember one time, I always like to illustrate things with stories, so, because then I think you get it better. Okay? So my mind experiences no peace. One time I saw an interview of His Holiness the Dalai Lama that was done by some reporter from the Los Angeles Times. So this reporter, you know, had studied, and they knew what the situation in Tibet was. And they said to His Holiness the Dalai Lama, you know, how come you're not angry? There's been, you know, environmental destruction in your country. You've been a refugee for over 50 years. You were forced to flee. You know, there's danger to your life. There's been genocide, and, you know, millions of Tibetans have been killed, and your religion destroyed in Tibet. And how come you're not mad at the communists? And His Holiness, you know, so this reporter was giving His Holiness the perfect platform for really speaking poorly, you know, really blasting communist China. But that's not what His Holiness did. He said, what use would it be if I were angry? If I were angry, my own mind wouldn't be peaceful. I would have indigestion. I wouldn't even be able to enjoy the food I was eating. I wouldn't be able to sleep at night. What good does anger do for me? And this journalist sat there like this, you know, because the journalist was setting the stage for him to blast, you know, communist China. And he didn't do that. Yeah. And instead he talked about the disadvantages that anger would have for him. And it's really true. You know, when we're angry, we can't sleep, can we? You know, you toss and turn all night because you're so angry. Yeah. And we can't enjoy our food because our stomach's all knotted up when we're angry. Yeah. We can't enjoy anything when we're angry. So who's the one that suffers when we're angry? We're the ones who suffer the most. Okay? Our mind is unhappy. There's really nothing good that comes from anger. Now, some people disagree. One time I was, where was I? It was in Michigan, I think. And I was talking with some people from the University of Michigan who were in the, doing conflict resolution. That's what they were teaching. And so I started talking about the disadvantages of anger. And some of these people got very agitated and upset with me, even a little angry, and said, but anger is good. We need anger, you know, because anger tells us that something's wrong. And anger helps us stick up for ourselves. And anger's really good. We need anger. And I was going, these people are trying to resolve conflicts and they're saying anger is good? You know, we had a little disagreement there. But it was very interesting for me that they really thought that anger was good. You know, as if only when we're angry do we know that a situation has to change. Yeah, that we'll only correct an injustice when we're angry. And I said to them, no, I don't think so. You can correct injustice out of compassion too. We don't have to be angry when something happens that we don't like. We don't have to be angry when somebody criticizes us. There's other ways to correct the situation besides anger. Okay. But sometimes we feel that only anger gives us the power and the energy to correct a situation. But that's not true, because anger usually interferes with our correcting the situation. Yeah. What do you think? Can you think of situations in your life, yeah, where maybe somebody did make a mistake that needed correction? But does getting angry at a person help them correct their mistake? When you were a little kid and you didn't do well in your schoolwork, did your parents getting angry at you help you do better in your schoolwork? No. Doesn't, does it? Anger doesn't help correct a difficult situation. So then the question is, why then do you get mad at your kids when they don't do well in their schoolwork? Good question, huh? Sometimes what we do, I've heard many parents say that when they were kids, their parents used to say certain things to them that they found very harmful or hurtful, and they made a very strong determination, I will never say that to my children. And lo and behold, what came out of their mouth when they're angry? Those very same words. How many of you are parents? How many of you have said to your children what you vowed you would never say to your children because it hurt you so much when your parents said it to you? Oh, only 5 parents? The rest of you never say anything mean to your children? Well, that's good to know. Okay, so we can't enjoy our food, we can't sleep well, we have difficulties in our family because of our anger. Okay. Also, another real big problem with anger is we do things that get us into trouble. Okay. I do work in prison. I think some of you know that. I visit prisons and I correspond with inmates. And a lot of times, you know, the guys want me to talk about anger and how to work with it. And sometimes I'll sit there and I'll look at them and I'll say, how many of you are here because of anger? And a lot of the inmates raise their hands, you know, because why is it that somebody breaks laws? It's either out of greed or it's out of anger. Or sometimes ignorance. They don't know what the law is or whatever. Yeah. But you know, why do people wind up in prison? Because of uncontrolled anger. Yeah. I was on the plane last night. I just arrived very early this morning. And I don't watch the movies on the plane, but sometimes you see what's going on because you see other people's screens. And, the amount of violence that's in these movies, and of course, all the movies have been edited to be shown on a plane, but there's still so much violence. And I was thinking, wow, there was a little boy sitting across the aisle from me. He was maybe, 10, 11, 12 years old. And, all this violence this kid is having put into his brain by watching TV. And the example it shows of, this is how you handle conflicts. And one of the things I was watching where there was a lot of violence, if there was this big fight between these two guys, and they were throwing things at each other and they, smashing, one guy smashed the other's windshield and they were fighting in the middle of the street. But what they never showed on the TV program is what would happen in ordinary life, which was a neighbor would call the police and come and arrest them. Right? If you hear two people screaming and yelling and throwing things and bashing cars in your neighborhood, you're going to call the cops, aren't you? And the cops are going to come and arrest them. They didn't show that in the TV program. You just have this revved up situation with all this violence, and then it flashes to the next scene. And that's what we call entertainment. Yeah, something's quite skewed. Okay, but we often, don't see the effects of our anger, or we're oblivious to the effects of our anger. Yeah. So actually, there's more to talk about on this verse, but I want to give you a little bit of time to ask questions and have a little bit of discussion. So I'll pause for right now. Tonight, when you go home and tomorrow, think about what you heard and make some examples from your life. But right now, you can ask some questions. And if you feel better writing things down and passing them to the ushers, you can do that, and they'll give me the questions. Otherwise, you can ask from the floor.